to Tridents and Tracers, your weekly comics roundup. I'm your host, Ryan Taylor, and today I've got 3 more fresh comics to review. This week, I'm going to be looking at Retcon number 2, The Family Trade number 1, and Redlands number 3. I've got a full lineup of Image comics, and that fucking excites me because you guys know I love my Image comics. So, let's get right into it. First up, Retcon. Now, Retcon is a series I almost reviewed in the first episode of Tridents and Tracers. The week before I started this side project, I attempted to start it, and I ran out of time. I didn't get it out in time, so I scrapped it. But Retcon was one of the series I wanted to do then. So, I didn't get a chance then. I'm glad now that I'm getting to review it, and I'm almost happier that I waited because issue 2 was really fucking cool. This series by Matt Nixon and Toby Cypress, it hooked me in with the synopsis. I was skimming through upcoming comics, and I read the description of this one, and it really grabbed me. Check this out. The reboot of a comic book miniseries that has never existed begins with an all-new, all-different issue number 1. Time to travel back and jump in on this comic while it was new. Now, I'm gonna be honest, that's confusing as shit. But at the same time, it's intriguing, and I had no idea what to expect. But after reading the first 2 issues and looking into different articles, different interviews with the creators, I understand now that while the story itself, these characters have never been told before. But that doesn't mean that in the continuity of the story, that story has never happened. Do you know what I mean? Basically, these characters are reliving a story they have lived before, whether they know it or not. And that's pretty fucking cool. It's a cool concept, and I'm really excited to see where they're going to go with that. Now, where they've gone so far, let's get into that. The story itself has a lot going on. First issue revealed the protagonist of the series. His name is Brandon Ross. He was maybe still part of, a supernatural bomb squad, as he calls it. And within the first issue, we're introduced to a secret government organization that's trying to kill off anyone involved with that bomb squad, as well as the demon that Ross's body is host to, aptly named Mary Sue. Mary Sue transforms Ross's body to suit whatever the situation calls for, which is pretty fucking cool. He doesn't transform in the same way every time. It just depends on what he needs in terms of fight or flight, I guess you would say. The second issue, that is the one I'm actually reviewing here today, it opens up the world even more. Ross is in police custody following the events of the first issue, which you can check that out on your own. We also follow what looks to be a military sergeant who is also a cyborg. The comic opens with him assembling himself, and he is possibly infected by a computer virus. We see glimpses of a woman who may or may not be the world's greatest witch, surrounded by Ouija boards, tarot cards, and pink flames. And of course, a standard superhero type shows up to blow up a police station and try and attack Ross. None of this has been actually explained yet, but it's really fun. Even if I'm not entirely sure what's going on yet. And it's amazing to look at. I haven't mentioned the art yet, but the art has this sort of 3D glasses look to it. Like the retro red and blue 3D glasses. It has that sort of look for some reason, and it is hard to put to fully describe what they're doing artistically, but I've never seen artwork like this. It's beautiful to look at, and I get the sense with this story that they're gonna build to a really fucking cool payoff. I hope so, anyway. Moving right along, next up we have the very first issue of a brand new series called The Family Trade. This one was not something I planned on reading today. Couldn't get my hands on all the comics I planned to review, but this one showed up and it looked pretty cool. It's got a really cool cover art, and I thought, fuck it, why not? This comic by Justin Jordan, Nikki Ryan, and Morgan Beam follows a secret organization called the Family that are essentially spies or assassins, a combination, I guess. They work to keep the society on their island, the Float, in check. Our protagonist, Jessa, attempts to assassinate a politician by the name of Stagger Burghardt, who looks, unsurprisingly, like a certain popular U.S. politician. I won't name him, but yeah. She has a change of heart at the last minute, nearly gets herself killed. She barely makes it out unharmed, and potentially expose the family in doing so. So she really fucked up. We're given a lot of backstory. There's a lot of expository here. It actually goes fully sepia toned with the whole history of the island and the family and so on. And it's necessary, it's relevant, it makes sense to include it, but it kind of takes the momentum out of the comic a little bit. I'm not complaining. I'm just to be honest, it took some of the fun out of it, but it's necessary, and I don't think they should have changed it. I feel like the next couple issues are not going to need that and are going to be way more fun than the first. They get into the differences between their timeline and the real world timeline, because it does take place on Earth. It's not science fiction exactly. It's just a different timeline, different series, a different history, you know. I'm not going to get into exactly what they changed. I will say that the art, again, in this book is very cool. It's very it's like a watercolor design, which is not what you would expect, but it adds to it. I will check out this book again. I don't mean to sound negative. I see a flaw in it, and that's just what I'm going to point out. You know, it's a fun book. I'll definitely be reading the next issue. Jessa seems like a very relatable, very cool character, and I'm interested to see what's going to happen next. She was left at the end of that issue in a pretty compromising situation. But that being said, I want to get into the last comic of the day, because this is the one that I'm excited for. Redlands number 3. Now, I mentioned earlier that Retcon was one of the first comics I was going to review. Redlands was another. And I am so fucking glad that I got to wait, because the second issue of Redlands, again, kind of took the momentum out of it a little bit. It was a good issue, but it wasn't great. And issue 3 was fucking great. Now, the main reason I'm focusing this episode on Redlands is because it's October. All the goblins and ghouls are out lurking around. I've decided to try and include a horror comic in every episode of Tridents and Tracers for the month of October. So, this week, Redlands number 3. I'm going to back up a bit here. Redlands. It's written by Jordi Belair, Vanessa R. Del Rey, and it follows a small town called Redlands in Florida, and sort of just the all-around growing supernatural shit that is taking the town by storm. There's murders, there are witches. Witches are the main thing here. The first issue, because I have to mention this, I can't talk about issue 3 without going back to the first one. The first issue, I'm not even going to tell you exactly what happened, but if you like horror, if you like getting so scared you shit your pants, go read that. That is easily the scariest comic I've ever read. Genuine scares, and scares are hard to translate to a comic book, but holy shit, it's good. Issue 2, and again, I didn't mean to sound negative about issue 2. It wasn't that it wasn't good, it was more payoff. It was more slow building, not suspense. You're led to believe one thing, and then everything kind of reveals itself near the end. But number 3 is a really good balance of the two. It strays from the witches we've seen in the first 2 issues and introduces us to motherfucking Gator Man. You're introduced to a bounty hunter named Laurent, I'm not positive. Introduced in the opening of the comic as a bounty hunter, and slowly throughout this issue you're wondering more and more, like he's got something deeper and darker going on. You don't know what it is until the end, when he is fully angered and transforms into a half man, half alligator, and it's fucking cool. But what they do that's really cool, I really enjoyed, is after this transformation scene, instead of following that up with more comic, they go straight to newspaper clippings, like realistic newspaper clippings about Gator Man sightings, and fuck, it's cool. This is 3 issues in, but this is one of the most promising horror comics I've ever read. And overall, as I always do, if I'm gonna recommend one of these books, man, it's Redlands, sorry. Because, yes, I do think it's the strongest and the best comic out of these 3, but also, it's October. Go scare the shit out of yourself. That being said, that is a wrap on another episode of Tridents and Tracers. Thank you all very much for listening. And as always, you can find other episodes of Tridents and Tracers, my other review podcast, New Reviews, or the main show from these spin-offs. Not from these spin-offs, the main show these spin-offs come from. Jedi Dropouts, over at www.jedidropouts.podbean.com, on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, Stitcher, or YouTube. Also, make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Shenanigandolph, or on Instagram at CaptainWow44. Thanks again, and I'll see you later.